Several weeks ago, I released a theory discussing my thoughts regarding the siblings' goal for the so-called restoration of their homeland. Following the events of Genshin Impact 2.6, some elements of that theory seem less likely to be true. But another aspect of that theory I teased at the end, which has been totally unimpacted by recent events, is the potential significance of Paimon. In this video, I'm going to briefly dive back into Greek mythology and use it to explain why Paimon just might be the key to everything. But first, I'm currently striving to reach the goal of 150,000 subscribers. So, whether you're new to the channel or you've watched lots of my videos but haven't subscribed yet, please support what I do by subscribing and help me beat the YouTube algorithm and reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. To start off, in my last video I described the aspects of Greek mythology which overlay with Teyvat. Here, we're instead going to focus on one of the more disturbing inspirations for Teyvat's history. In Greek mythology, there exists no shortage of grim tales and tragic stories. But one of the more grisly of those tales is that which details the ultimate fate of the creator god, Phanes. The primordial gods killed their creator and devoured him. The intent of that act was to divide the power contained within their creator amongst their own ranks. We have an event mentioned way back in Genshin Impact's manga Prologue that depicts a disturbingly similar concept. Upon being asked by Vanessa whether entering Celestia makes one into a god, Venti responded with a rather gory, yet cryptic description. In other words, Pangu gave his blood to form the rivers and seas. The god sacrificed Purusha and cut his body to pieces, and then fashioned all living beings with those parts. The brain of the giant Ymir became the clouds. Their sacrifices seeded life in the unliving cosmos. The story seems to describe the Archon's knowledge of the creation of the world. But what's interesting here is how this relates further to what we learned in 2.4 and 2.5 about Teyvat's past. Within the depths of the abyss that is Enkanomiya, we learned that Phanes, just as in Greek mythology, was indeed the creator of all things in Teyvat as well. But we also discovered that Phanes was divided into 4 shades. Only one of those shades was ever mentioned by name in the game itself. However, I believe it is likely that the names mentioned in the tale told by Venti are likely to be that of the other shades of Phanes. Additionally, it seems that for a time the shades of Phanes and Phanes itself existed simultaneously. We also have the line from the Year of the Ark's opening in Enkanomiya's text before Sun and Moon that specifically mentions another cryptic line. The primordial one had a sacred plan for humans. As long as they were happy, it too rejoiced. This calling attention to the thought that Phanes would have done almost anything for the humans it desired to create, including possibly sacrifice its very own shades to create the world of Teyvat, the bountiful ark and safe haven meant to carry humanity through the vast and turbulent seas of the void. Only time will tell, but while on the topic of time, this brings me to the final shade, Istaroth, or Kairos, the god of moments. I should note that Istaroth is the only shade of the 4 I've discussed which we can actually confirm existed, at least at this time, as no others have canon mentions in the game. But if the other shades were sacrificed, then this shade was the last one standing after the creation of Teyvat. And this would intuitively explain why she is the sole shade mentioned within the text of Byaku Yakuku, described as every moment and the measure of 1,000 winds and the sun and moon, establishing a solid relationship between herself and the elements of time and wind. This is where the discussion of Phanes and the sacrifice begins to truly come into focus. It seems possible, and even likely, that in a similar fashion to Greek mythology, in which, as mentioned, the gods consumed Phanes to distribute its power, the powers of Phanes' shades were consumed and redistributed to form the elements we know in Teyvat. If Istaroth was representative of 2 elements, Chrono and Animo, then it's reasonable the other 6 elements would be divided in 2s to the other 3 shades. But the reason I'm discussing all of this is to bring context to the main goal of this theory. the idea that Paimon might be the key to everything. As mentioned, the creation of Teyvat is greatly inspired by Greek mythology, and while it's probably not a one-to-one comparison, we can assume, since certain events and names have appeared in congruent roles, that the trend will continue. In Greek mythology, Phanes was consumed to give power to the gods of time, and in Teyvat, Phanes was in essence split, and then, as I proposed by Venti's description, the shades were sacrificed to establish the world and create the powers we know as elements. With one shade remaining, Phanes could have reasonably been sustained to some degree, until which point Istaroth was also sacrificed and divided for her powers. Animo is among our known 7 elements, so it does seem probable that her sacrifice and subsequent division did occur, meaning someone out there is destined to hold the king's gnosis, and that's where Paimon comes in. Our floating companion is mired in mysteries we can't yet explain. First and foremost, however, is her rather convenient first encounter with the traveler. Why was she out there in the water to be fished up and rescued to begin with? To explain this, I need to discuss an oddity of a few locations around the map of Mondstadt. While all of this will be speculative, I've not been able to shake the thought since I first considered the possibility. The symbology on this altar suggests that they represent a deep importance within Teyvat that is yet to be explained, like so many other things. They're certainly not meaningless scenery, simply added for aesthetics. So, what if the reason these are sealed within protected rooms on the Mountain of Dragonspine is because these were the birthplaces of the first gods? Visionless manifestations of the shades, divided powers which would go on to battle for supremacy as archons. Thus far, we've only seen 3 of these altars. 2 existing on the mountain behind the sealed doors, possibly representing the birthplace of Decarabian, the god of storms, and Barbados, the god of wind. The final of the 3, however, is the one that is truly noteworthy, as it is linked to the Temple of the Thousand Winds, and the 2 sundials that appear in eastern Mondstadt. This altar is first encountered when completing the questline that explores the aforementioned sundials, but something akin to a rift, ripple, or wound in time is described there. Most importantly, though, its location is right off the beach where our traveler first fished up our suspicious companion, and is where our entire journey began. Was this the birthplace of a splinter of the power of the God of Moments? And if so, was this splinter Paimon? This would make Paimon not an actual god of time, but rather an unknowing competitor for the unassigned element yet to be claimed, which lends to the question, are there others? So, if Paimon is a competitor for the 8th unassigned gnosis, why would she have been created at exactly the right moment to be rescued by the traveler? Well, the answer lies in the question, because it was the right moment. The meaning of the word kairos is understood by many to have a relationship with time, but is not often understood for its true meaning, which is the concept of the perfect moment. It's not a measure of time, but rather a specific time or moment. With that in mind, Paimon, much like the seed of the sacred Sakura, could have been birthed at the perfect moment at the altar on the island, with Kairos knowing full well that she would be immediately whisked into the ocean by the Animo Guardian residing there, only to be later rescued by the traveler. Now, you may be thinking, why would the altar exist and the Guardian Protector be there if Paimon had not yet spawned there? This is likely because they were always there. In a similar fashion to how the sacred Sakura always existed to everyone in Inazuma throughout the countless generations, while A witnessed this fully grown tree simply appear one day. That occurred because A was guided by her sister in Istaroth's influence, a full 500 years in the future from the time our journey even started. Essentially, it's all akin to a time causality paradox.
Time travel!
A concept well beyond the scope of this video. I said at the start of the video that Paimon just might be the key to everything, but I've yet to explain why. I have established that she might be the potential vessel for the 8th gnosis. That being the case, if she does end up obtaining the Gnosis, it's reasonable to think that the Tsaritsa and her harbingers will come for it, because within Greek mythology also lies the possible hidden truth of why the Tsaritsa is collecting the Gnosis. Death in Greek mythology was not the end for Phanes. The Olympian god, Zeus, resurrected the creator god. I explained in my previous video that the Olympian gods serve as the inspiration for the structure and the roles of the 7 archons. So then, it could very well be possible that the reason the Tsaritsa is collecting the Gnosis is because she intends to resurrect Phanes, and together with the creator, reignite the war against the second who came. The war with Celestia that was utterly lost with Phanes in a weakened and divided state upon their arrival. This resurrection, given the probable need for the king's Gnosis in order to see it through, will require someone to ascend and claim the 8th Gnosis before the Tsaritsa can even begin to attempt to harvest her bounty. Claiming the 8th Gnosis, if only briefly, will properly re-establish time as the 8th element in Teyvat, and possibly establish Paimon as its archon. But the question remains then, who will she have to best in order to ascend to this role? And what would be her principle? Well, as they say, seeds of stories brought by the wind will bloom into legends in due time. And that's it for this video. What do you think of the potential future for Paimon? Do you think she's destined for conflict over who may become the 8th and final archon? Do you think the mysterious altars in Mondstadt are the birthplaces of the archons? And if so, do you think we'll find more throughout the other nations of Teyvat? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you are notified when my next video goes live. And if you want to see more, check out one of these other videos. Thanks for watching Teyvat Historia. May the 8th guide you, travelers.